welcome to this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Today's conversation will be about Paul Greengrass's Captain Phillips. Captain Phillips was adapted to screen by Billy Ray, and it's based on the book by Richard Phillips, A Captain's Duty. And the film is essentially a retelling of the 2009 hijacking of a U.S. freighter, the Maersk, Alabama, by a crew of Somali pirates. It is told from the unique point of view of ship captain Richard Phillips, played by Tom Hanks, and adversarially by the Somali pirate captain Muse, played by newcomer Barkhad Abdi. And eventually the film leads to a dramatic and stunning conclusion that leaves many viewers shocked yet thrilled at what they've seen. I'm going to bring in my co-host now. And when we first see Captain Phillips, Richard Phillips, he's an unassuming middle-aged man. And one of the first scenes he has is with his wife. He doesn't say much. He doesn't make a big deal of the mission or the voyage he's about to go on. Do you think that encounter in any way sets the tone in how Captain Phillips behaves later on in the film, especially when he is, held hostage?
I'm actually going to say no. I think his reaction was very measured and very not extremely over the top, and I think that could have set the tone without any of that, without any of the scenes at the beginning. I think we would have seen just the way Captain Phillips was acting before the ship was hijacked, that his characterization in the movie was not going to be one of a angry, loudmouth captain.
Well, then in many ways the scene does set the tone because he's shown as somebody who's measured. He's somebody who doesn't, become nervous knowing that he has to voyage around the Horn of Africa. So in many ways it does set the tone because this is a person who doesn't have those jumps in personality or moments of anger. He's a level-headed person who kind of lives his life, and that's kind of how he approached even a difficult hijacking situation.
Well, let's talk about the characterization then. Big criticism of this movie from people who are in this movie, such as Chief Engineer Mike Perry, have said it's not a true representation of what really happened, and that Captain Phillips, that the real life Captain Phillips wasn't really as portrayed in this movie. Do you think that detracts from any way from what the story Paul Greengrass is telling, or do you think it still comes up on screen?
I don't think it detracts from the story that Paul Greengrass is telling. He's explicitly said that the facts are the fact that nobody got injured on the crew and that they returned safely, and that's kind of what the movie tries to get across. But I think it's a fair commentary on the romanticism of being a captain. Because even in scenes in this film, the captain is so detached from the crew, the chief engineer, the inner workings of the actual mission and the ship, that you can kind of make sense that they're not going to be somebody who's, so intricately involved in, say, life-saving maneuvers. And maybe the chief engineer is fair in that Captain Phillips would not have been somebody who could bark out orders of what safety maneuvers were and maneuvering the ship in a way like that. But what it is the captain position is still so romanticized that, captain is protecting the ship, captain will go down with the ship. So in many ways, it's a double-edged sword. Maybe the captain is not as involved anymore, but there's still that figurehead, and in that way, you kind of have to, if something happens and the crew is saved, you have to kind of defer to them that they did their job to help that.
Oh, yeah. And another criticism is that it wasn't even necessary to sail into Somali waters. They said he could have avoided that. He just wanted to expedite the process, so to speak.
Well, that's interesting. That's something that, we don't really see that in this film with Captain Phillips being a risk taker, but he seemed more methodical. So that'd be an interesting thing. That could be something that maybe if that was characterized better, we could see more of a flaw in Phillips' character, where right now he's sort of, he's an infallible hero who really cannot do much wrong. Let's talk about the Somali pirates. you know that Phillips is able to use the procedures to get them to retreat once. Why do you think Muse, who's played by Barkat Abdi, and his crew come back the next day? What do you think motivates them to come back and go after this particular ship again after they've kind of, been scared off once?
I just think it shows that this way of this piracy that they've fallen into, it's either go broke or go home, so to speak, in layman's terms. It's because they've already invested so much in coming out to sea in the first place. I mean, you do see that setup where they collect their crew together and go out to sea. It's going to be tough to do that again in the future to succeed their goals of successfully taking over a ship and getting the ransom they need from it. So I think that's why, in a perverse way, the so to speak villains in this movie show that kind of resolve because they know it's their only shot, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think they show a lot of risk, and one half of the pirates retreat, but this half shows that that they do want to be recognized. There's a lot of mention of clan elders and getting respect. So it seems like these pirates, headed by Muse, definitely want more respect or want, to move up in life. So that risk, of coming back the next day means so much to them, and that's really the factor why they do return.
All right, and let's talk about the actors who played the Somali pirates. All of them first-time actors. How do you think Paul Greengrass is able to get such performances out of such clearly unexperienced actors?
Well, not only Greengrass, I think you have to give credit to the actors. The Academy this year has recognized Barkat Abdi, who plays the Somali pirate captain. In many ways, it paralleled their own experiences, the actors' experiences, with their characters' experiences. Like we saw early on that these Somali pirates were not the most experienced. They weren't the most successful. And in many ways, these actors weren't the most successful or the most experienced. So I could see throughout the movie that while the characters learned, they sort of kind of learned, in many ways how to act. So that was kind of satisfying to see. And I'm pretty sure it would be satisfying for Greengrass to see that as the stakes got higher in the film, that these actors became more capable with the material. So in that way, it paralleled it. And I think in both ways, the story and Greengrass's direction helped these actors mature. And what Barkat Abdi does, it doesn't happen much. I know Lupita Nyong'o this year has done it also. Being nominated for your first film is a historic achievement. And he may not be somebody that we see much again, but what he did in this film should be recognized, and it has been.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Sometimes the best performances are the ones that are rooted in the most believability.
And a character that obviously you have to relate to and you have to think is believable is Tom Hanks' portrayal of Captain Phillips. And many will joke that once again, Tom Hanks is on a ship or stranded by himself, similar to his Castaway character. But in this sense that where the Hanks character in Castaway, kind of had a breaking point, like we were talking about earlier, Hanks and Captain Phillips in this was very composed. How do you think Hanks' ability to really remain calm and dignified, or try to portray dignity, helps humanize Captain Phillips for much of the audience?
Well, I think it's because he takes on in a weird way, like I said before, he takes on a very paternalistic role with some of the pirates. I think one of the pirates even, he gives them water because he feels like he respects them. Like I think you mentioned before, some of the members of the pirate crew, they respect like elders, right? So I think he kind of got that in that brief period they were stranded. They got that father-son relationship, and I think anytime you can see somebody older who you respect, I think that creates that real connection that you want with the character.
And I think this role definitely suited Tom Hanks, and he showed that he was very capable of portraying Captain Phillips and bringing his dignity and his story to the screen. The director of this film we've already touched upon is Paul Greengrass, who is a very accomplished director in his own right, heading the Bourne series, heading United 93. And once again, he's created a very action-paced but smart action film. What do you think it is about Greengrass's style that elicits such smart but captivating action films that many other directors can only hope to achieve?
I think it because he keeps his action very grounded. I remember when the Bourne movies were coming out, I think he really, really wanted to make sure that really talked about how his movies never used any CGI effects. I do like computer generated effects. I mean, they do help in movies, but I think in a movie that you want to keep grounded, I think Greengrass tries to make it as though this is something that could actually happen, and you're watching something that actually happen. And I think computer generated effects show like, okay, this is something that is very unlikely to happen, so here's an effect for you. And I think a movie like Captain Phillips, where Greengrass directs, avoids that and shows that, yeah, this is realistic.
Yeah, I agree. That's an excellent point because you never see characters taking, exorbitant risks. If it's grounded in reality, there's enough tension and enough, intrigue in situations like a hostage situation that you don't have to over-sensitize or blast our senses. You just got to tell the story, and it's going to be gripping enough. One of the key elements in Captain Phillips and one of the areas that it's been recognized in is in sound, both editing and mixing. And I thought it was frankly a fantastic use of the environment. It's hard to take a freighter of that size, but then still make it feel, you can feel all the noises, all the steel grates, all the water cannons. I think it was a great job by those involved with editing and mixing to create the environment audibly as we were seeing visually.
Yeah, there's not much else I can add to that. My only regret is I never got around to watch this movie in a theater, which was the original intent of the director. But sometimes there's restrictions on what you can watch.
Well, the state of home video has improved to such that you can kind of get that, and watching it on DVD, Blu-ray, it gets the kind of the image. We're almost nearing the end of this edition of Inside the Academy Studio, and like always, we like to ask some questions. So I ask, what was your favorite moment in Captain Phillips?
I think my favorite moment has to be it's actually a scene with another, not even first-time actor, but really a non-actor. She's played by Navy corpsman Danielle Albert. She's not an actor. She actually is part of the United States Navy, and she's able to bring that believability we talked about before with their scene with Tom Hanks. I mean, I think Greengrass is able to do that by having her act the way she would with any other actual examination, and to translate that with the camera on for a non-actor and really get that emotion across that Tom Hanks is feeling at the same time with her as part of the scene. Well, I think that was a great direction by Greengrass and a great job by all the actors in that scene.
Yeah, that's my scene too. That's my favorite moment. I think it just goes to Greengrass's ability to make that docudrama feel, and the ability of the U.S. Navy physician to do that examination, and then Tom Hanks' excellent portrayal of a patient in shock, somebody who was so composed for so long, now essentially breaking. It's such a perfectly filmed moment and something that's so believable in many ways. Okay, so what was your least favorite moment in Captain Phillips?
I think my least favorite moment has to be the setup at the beginning. I think I kind of touched on it before. I didn't really think it was that necessary for him to have the scene with his wife just talking. I think that could have been. I would have preferred if the movie went all out with the more fly on the wall type of survival that we saw. But I guess maybe that would have made it more similar to a movie like Gravity, which we've already seen this year. So I think it's a way that it kind of differentiated itself.
My least favorite part was, we've already talked about how Greengrass has created such a tense thriller, but in much of the negotiation with the Somali pirates in the lifeboat, to me, it's almost seemed like it went on a little too long, and particularly the first Navy approach. You would think that they would get right away know that these are pretty inexperienced pirates and they're not really capable of much, but it kind of lingers in the first couple of exchanges. Nobody does anything, so I'm sure it's realistic procedure, but as a narrative tool, it takes a long time to develop, so maybe that could have been shortened. Okay, the last thing we do is word association. So when you think of Captain Phillips, what word do you think of?
Navy.
And I think of cannon. So when we think of Captain Phillips, we think of Navy and cannon. That is this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Thank you.